Good morning, diners, and we are here with another special report from the Iditarod, the last great race on Earth. This morning we are in Koyuk, and it is one of the last of the rest stops on the way to Nome, and the race has taken quite a turn over the last 10 hours or so. The leader, who looked basically unbeatable up until this leg, has fallen back off the pace. He had some kind of trouble. We don't know what it was yet. I don't know what it was. Maybe the race officials know what it was. He's still running, but he's been bypassed by two of the mushers. Jor has bypassed him, and so has Peter Kaiser. And Peter is now, in fact, in first place at mile 8:27, and Jor is at mile 8:08, quite a ways behind Peter. Peter has been maintaining a rapid pace across the Bering Sea, whereas both Jor and Nic have slowed considerably, and as I said, Jor is ahead of Nic now, but only by 3 miles. He's at mile 8:08, and Jor is at mile 8:05. The Koyuk rest stop is one that they are just about guaranteed to take a pretty long rest at, although they have another rest at White Mountain, which is 2 stops away. That is mandatory. That one is an 8-hour rest. So it's a little hard to say what they're going to do at this rest stop, other than feed the dogs and, do the usual stuff. I'm not sure why Jor is so much slower than Peter, because they were both neck and neck when they bypassed Nic. So it's hard to say what's slowing Jor down, just as it's hard to say what slowed down Nic. Now it's the early morning hours, about 6:40 a.m. Alaska time, and on the leaderboard map, Peter shows to be basically right on top of the rest area of Koyuk. But on the video here, the live stream, so far, his sled and his dogs and him have not appeared. I'm hoping that before I turn this off, that they will come rolling into town. That would be really nice. But I probably have to turn it off and then hope I catch it and get it turned back on again when they roll in, right? So that's what I'll do. Okay, so that's where we're at right now, and how it's going to go the rest of the way is anybody's guess, because this was a major surprise. All right, we'll be back in a little while. Okay, I'm back. Apparently, the GPS tracker that shows the locations of these guys was suffering a glitch, which it does periodically. they're not. It's not a perfect system all the time. And I've got a correction to make. It is not Peter Kaiser in the lead, and he's not at mile 828. Jor Leifseth Ulsum is in the lead, and he is at mile 808. And it is Pete that is at mile 805, and so is Jesse Boyer, who is also in the running here for sure now. And Jesse, of course, as I mentioned in an earlier update, is female, and it's nice to have a female up there in the lead. I personally got my introduction to the Iditarod before I moved to Alaska, years before, with the success of Susan Butcher, who won several Iditarods and unfortunately fairly recently died of cancer. So in terms of arrival in Koyuk, according to the tracker, it looks like Jor is right on top of the place. And again, according to the tracker now, it's got Pete in town, in Koyuk. So I don't know what the hell is going on based on all that stuff is what it boils down to. Because if he's in town, I don't see any dogs. And I don't see any Pete. And I see the volunteers just kind of milling around. You know, if they were in town, those guys would be grabbing onto the dogs and the tow line, getting a hook in the ground so they can't keep running, and then Jor or Pete has to check in, give him his bib number, and so forth and so on. Say how many dogs he's got running, how many dogs are left, and most of these guys have dropped a couple of dogs. Last I checked, Jessie Boyer had the most dogs still running. She had 13 the last time I checked that stat. Whereas Jor, I think, was down to 11 or maybe even 10. And I don't know where Pete is at in terms of his team, how many are left. But you know, it's kind of spare parts with the dogs. You don't need 14 dogs to pull a sled. And so it's, you know, it's a buffer, because dogs do get lame on the run. They'll pull a muscle trying to pull their feet up out of snow, stuff like that. And there are spots along the trail, the rest areas, where there are vets, and they've got kennels to rest the dogs, and usually within 24 hours they're pretty much back to normal. They don't need any really major medical care, but they also have medevac bush planes that will take the dogs out of the bush and down to Anchorage, to a major veterinary hospital or whatever if there's a major problem. So the medical care at in the Iditarod, especially nowadays, with all the scrutiny that there is from the PETA people, is very, very stringent. And they've got vets at every check stop, and the dogs are scrutinized for being drugged, and all sorts of stuff. And you know, as far as it goes, I mean, as in every sport, there have been bad apples in the past. People wanted to cheat the issue and win at any cost. But I met these guys at the recent Mushers Banquet right before this race. And, you know, these guys love their dogs. They live for their dogs. And I can't believe any of them would compromise their safety in any way. And so I really doubt you'll see any kind of that controversy this year. At least I hope not. All right. I'm going to shut off once again because despite what the GPS tracker says, there's no sign of Pete or Jor or Jesse or Nick. And I'm really curious as to which one's going to roll into town first. All right. I'll try to get back later, but if not, that's all the sport's doing. This time until next time, here on the collapse update of the Doomstead Diner. See you later. All right. A musher is rolling into town. And it looks like it's Peter Kaiser. He's got a beard and a red jacket. As I recall, that was what Peter was wearing. And they're getting the stats on him, getting his number, and they'll also do a gear check. Make sure he has all of the required gear with him that they need to take for safety purposes. And in terms of a time check, so that we know how far behind Jor is and Jessia is, it is now 8:56 a.m. And Pete has pulled off into the rest area with his dogs, and they're going to be laying down straw for the dogs to rest on. And then Pete is going to go about his business of preparing the food for the dogs. And one nice thing about being the first person in there is you get your choice of spots, right? And darn, our feed has froze up for right now. All right, I think, assuming that the GPS tracker is right, then it's going to be a little while, probably at least an hour, before Jor checks in. If I can catch that one, I will. Otherwise, at least you got to see a musher come into town. And it's Pete Kaiser, and he is the man to beat right now. He's in first place. All right. Now, it's really the end of this broadcast. So that's all the doom. Sports doom, that is. This time until next time, here on the collapse update of the Doomstead Diner. Hasta la pasta, baby. Oh, and don't forget, you can join us for conversation on all collapse topics, not just the Iditarod. If you join us inside the diner, on the Diner Forum, where you will find many more videos and many more discussions than you'll find out there on the Diner blog. Although, for people who just like to read, the Diner blog is very comprehensive on its coverage of collapse, too. So, you know, whatever strikes your fancy is good, but we always are looking for new blood in the Dino Forum, people with different ideas, different concepts, and beliefs about how collapse will progress as industrial civilization goes down the toilet. All right, later.